Hello and welcome to another React tutorial. Today we are going to build a basic contact book app using React, Firebase and Tailwind. We are going to cover some React basics. We're going to manage our state with useState. We're going to handle some forms, or rather just one form. We're going to fetch our data from Firebase and save it to Firebase. We are going to ensure our app is responsive by using Tailwind, and we are going to lay a solid foundation for understanding some key concepts when building a React app. In order to start working on this project, you will first need to set up your React app. For setting up React on my end, I've used Vite as I did in most of my tutorials. To install a new Vite app, you are going to run yarn create Vite. If you are using Next, you can set up Next to have Tailwind support out of the box, which Vite doesn't have yet. So to install Tailwind, to set up Tailwind while using Vite, you will need to go to this website. So tailwindcss.com/docs/guides/vite, and in there are a few instructions that you can follow to set up your Tailwind. I already did that, so I'm not going to go through it. I also have some of the project set up already. So I have a components folder. I have a few components. So AddContactForm, I have contact, and I have icon. For icons, I have a separate folder where we have the 4 icons for deleting the contact, for email, for URL, and for the phone number. And we have a utility folder which has Firebase.js file, it has Firebase config.js, and it has getColor. Firebase.js is going to be our file where all of our Firebase logic and methods are going to be. Firebase config is going to be your config file that you are going to get, or config object, which you're going to get when we set up your Firebase. So, but it should have this structure. And if you intend to publish this somewhere, you are definitely not supposed to do it this way. This is just for informational purposes, for learning purposes, because in this config you're going to have some sensitive data that you don't want to include in your GitHub, or even worse, to publish it on your website, because your API key and your project ID, which are very important, should remain hidden. So if you are going to use Firebase, you should definitely set it up through a backend. This is just to show you in one project how you can use Firebase to handle your data, but you should definitely not use it like this in production. And the getColor.js is just a function which I basically just found online, and it's a function that's going to give us an HSL color based on an input, which is a text or a string. You basically have your default profile icon be of a certain color based on the contact's name in your contact app or your phone book app. So that's what this is basically, and you can manipulate those colors by changing the values here. So either this value or these two values, you can play around with it, and you're going to basically get HSL colors which are different saturation and brightness. My app component is just a hello world div. The index CSS is just importing the inter font from Google Fonts. If you want to use a different font, you can use a different font, and this is the setup that I have for Tailwind, which you're also going to have if you set it up this way, and the main JSX, which doesn't do anything out of the ordinary. I also have a prettier plugin for Tailwind set up for this project. This isn't necessary. This is just going to reorder your Tailwind classes based on Tailwind's default ordering, so it's a bit more readable. I'm also going to add this users.js file in the utility folder, which is an array of objects which are basically going to be our default contacts. So I'm going to use these just for testing purposes. And it's just basically each contact is an object which has a name, which has an email, a phone number, and a website. And we are going to use this data to create the contact cards. When we get to the Firebase part, I'm going to remove this and we're not going to use it anymore. So to start off, we are going to import useState and useEffect here. And we are going to import our components here. So we are importing contact from components contact and AddContactForm from components AddContactForm. Basically, our contact is going to be our card, which is going to represent a contact, and AddContactForm is going to be our modal form, which we're going to use to input our contact values and save them. So here, instead of hello world, we are going to add a button, which is going to be our new contact button. Below that, we're going to add another div, which is basically going to be our contacts container. Below that, we are going to add our AddContactForm, which, like I said, is going to be our modal. So now we are going to import our contacts. Yeah, I guess the file is called users, but it should be called contacts. So let's rename it. So contacts, and in there, contacts. It's named users because I used an API to get it, to get these, and in the API they are called users. So we are going to import contacts from utility contacts, and we are going to map through them here to add them to their own contact cards. So we're going to say contacts map contact return, and let's just add here a question mark. So if there are contacts, then we are going to return, and we are going to return our contact component, and we can see 10 cards here, and we are going to pass in some props here. So we are going to say contact equals to contact because we want the data from each contact in there. We need to have a key, which is going to be our contact.id, and we are going to pass in a function here, which is going to be remove contact, and it's going to be equal to remove contact, and we're going to pass in the contact ID. So we don't have this function yet, so we are going to add it. We're going to say const remove contact, and we are just going to add a to-do here, implement later. And we are going to create another function, which is going to be for adding a contact. So we're going to say add contact, and we are also going to implement this later. We are going to continue by going into contact and starting to implement stuff here. So this shouldn't be a card, this should be a contact. And as we know, we have two props here. So it's contact and remove contact, which is our function. And at the top here, we are going to import a bunch of stuff. So we're going to import our icons from our icons folder. So our email icon, our phone icon, our link icon, and our delete icon. Next, we're going to import our icon component because we are going to use all of these icons, and we are going to import our get color. For get color, I'm going to leave a URL in the description below where you can basically find the original function that I used, or you can use it, you can find it on my GitHub and copy paste it from there. And in here, we are going to write a short function, which we are going to use to pull or to get initials from the contact name. So we can use them as our default icon, so to speak, or default profile picture. So we're going to say const initials equals contact.name, and we're going to split it over an empty character. And then we're going to map all of those words, which should be, if there's just the first name, or one word for first name and one word for last name, that should be 2 words. So we are going to map the words, and from each word we are just going to take the first character, and then we are going to take the result of that and we are going to join them, and this should give us the initials, and we can test it out by saying initials here. And if I refresh, we can see that we do have our initials, and if it's a name that has 3 words, then you're going to have 3 letters, so keep that in mind. So we are going to remove these initials, and inside of this div we're going to add another div, and inside of that div we're going to add a code block, and we're going to say initials, and we're going to add a span which is going to have our initials, and right next to it we are going to add a div which is going to have our contact name, so contact.name, and below that div we are going to have another div which is going to be our container for our icons, and in here we are going to have 4 icons. So I'm just going to paste this 4 times, and we have our icons there. Now we're going to continue by drilling into the icon and setting up icons first before continuing to set up anything else in the contact component. Each of our icons is going to have 4 different props, which are going to be source, alt, action, and type. So source is basically the icon that we are going to display. The alt is going to be the alt text. The action is going to be what happens when we click on the icon, and type is just so we can differentiate between delete icon and other icons, because it's going to be colored differently. And speaking of being colored differently, we're going to add our Tailwind colors for the hover effect here. So const hover colors is going to have a value for link and value for delete. So delete button or delete icon is going to have this color, BG red 200, when we hover it, and all of the others are going to be links, and they're going to have indigo 200 color. Next, we're going to define the image that we are going to use, or the actual icon, which is going to be an image tag, which is going to have source equal to source, alt is going to be equal to alt, and we are going to add some class names which are going to be width 8 and padding of 1.5. So these are going to be styles just for the image, and now we're going to add some styles for the component. So const styles equals, we're going to add backticks, and we're going to say grow hover. On hover we're going to say cursor pointer, we're going to have flex, justify center, and we're going to add our property here, the hover colors, and we are going to pass in the type. So if it's the link type, we are going to have this hover, and if it's a delete type, we're going to have this hover. And we are going to add a function here which is going to handle our action property. We're going to say const handle function equals function, and we're just going to say if type equals to delete and window dot confirm, and in there we're going to say are you sure you wish to delete this contact ? If you've never done this before, this is basically how you can call your browser's default confirm window or confirm modal, which says this is the question that's going to be displayed in the modal, and if we confirm and the delete is the type, then we are going to do the action. So we are going to call the action function if the type is delete and if we have confirmed. And in all other cases, our action is just going to be our URL. So below that, we're going to say if type of action is equal to function, we are going to return a div with our image. And in there, we're going to have a class name, and the class name are going to be the styles that we defined above. And on click event is going to be our handle function. Like I said, if the action is a function, we know that is just our delete button being pressed. So we need the image and we need to run that function once this is clicked. Otherwise, we're going to say else return, and we are going to return our anchor tag, which is also going to have our image. But our href is going to be our action, and our class name is once again going to be styles. And we are going to remove this because we are already returning what we need to return. Since we are currently not passing in anything to our icons, we are going to go back here to contact and we are going to pass in our props. So for the first one, we're going to say source equals to email icon, alt is email, action is going to be backticks, mail to, colon, and then we're going to say contact email, which is basically going to be our, if you remember, it's going to be our href. And if you set up your href to be mail to, it's going to open your default mail client, and the type is link. For the next one, we are going to change the source to phone icon, alt is going to be phone, and our action is going to be tel, T-E-L, colon, contact.phone. This is going to open your browser's default phone calling app. For the third one, we are going to set our source to link icon, our alt to link, and our action is going to be contact website. And the last one is the delete icon, where we're going to say source is the delete icon, alt is delete, action is remove contact, which is, if you remember, our prop here. And for the type, we're going to say delete. So we can see that our colors are being applied properly. So now we are going to continue styling our contact cards here. So starting with our top div, we're going to say flex width full, flex call, overflow hidden, rounded MD, BG gray 50, shadow neutral 300, and SM width of 56. In the div below, we're going to say class name, flex, items center, border B, and border gray 200. For our initials span, we're going to say class name, we're going to say padding 2 and text white, and we are going to add style right beside that because we need to implement our color, which we need to do through JavaScript, and we are going to say background color is going to be our get color function, and we are going to pass in our contact.name now, and we can see it working. Now, why contact.name? Because in theory, you can have two contacts with same initials, but you don't necessarily want them to have the same color because they are different people. So I thought this made more sense to get the color based on the full name and not just the initials. And for our contact name, we're going to say class name, grow, text center, and text gray 600. And for our icon container, flex, justify evenly, and BG indigo 50. And now back in our App.jsx, we're going to continue styling here. So for our main div, we are going to say text MD, flex minimum height screen, flex call, items center, BG orange 50, px8, which is padding over x, padding top is going to be also 8, font inter, text gray 700, and SM is going to reset our padding over X. Now for the font inter to work, you are going to need to open your Tailwind config and add this to your setup. So you're going to have to add the theme. If you don't already have the theme, you're going to need to add theme extend font family, and inside of font family you're going to say inter, and you're going to add this array here saying inter and sans serif, and then when you use font inter somewhere, it's going to apply it properly. For our button, we are going to say type is going to be button. We are going to have an on click, which is going to call a function which is going to say set is modal open to true. Now we don't have this yet, so we are going to use our state to handle when the modal, and this is the modal, when is it going to be open. So basically clicking on this button just opens the add contact form. At the top we are going to add our state here saying is modal open and set is modal open, which is going to use state, and the default is going to be false. So by default add contact form is closed. And we're going to add some class names here. MB6, which is margin bottom 6, inline flex, width full, justify center, rounded MD, BG blue 600, padding X3, padding Y2, text SM, font semi-bold, text white, shadow SM, hover BG blue 500, SM margin X auto, and SM width auto, which is going to set up our button. And for the contacts container, flex, flex row, flex wrap, justify center, gap 4, LG width of 1/2, LG justify start. In the contact I made a typo here, so this should be flex, which is now going to fix our icons. So our icons now look as they should, and on the bigger screens they also look as they should. So as for the visual part, everything looks good here. Now we're going to start working on our add contact form here. And our add contact form component is going to have a few props, which are going to be our add contact, which is going to be our add contact function here, which we haven't implemented yet. Is open is the state which is controlling if modal is open, which if you remember we are activating through this button here. And for the close we are going to just set is modal open to false. So at the top we are going to import useState and useRef because we're going to use them. We are also going to add a constant here, which is going to be called default state, which is just our default state for our contacts. Why are we using this? It's just so we can reset it a bit easier. So when modal is closed, we want to reset it. So that's how we're going to do it. The modal, for purposes of this mini project, the modal is always going to be in the DOM. Why? Because we are adding a slight transition animation to it. If you want it to be more optimized, then you would not have it there all the time, and then you would not need to bother with resetting it, because when you add it to DOM and remove it, it would reset automatically. But I wanted to add a slight of cool opacity transition, and for that to work we need to have it in the DOM at all times. Since this is just a mini project, I think it's not that big of a deal, but if you don't want to do it, feel free to not do it. And as we said, here we are going to have add contact. We are going to have is open and close as our props. And just so we can see what we are doing, I'm going to say is open equals to true, so we can see the modal all the time. We are going to add our state here. We're going to call it form data and set form data. And for the form data, we're going to set our default state here. And here we are going to remove the add contact form. And for our main div, we're going to have class name, and we are going to add backtick, and we want to check if our modal is open. And if it is open, then we're going to give it z index of 10 and opacity of 100. And if it's not, we are going to say pointer events none and opacity 0. And after that, we are going to say transition opacity duration is going to be 300, and we are going to use ease in and out. Inside of the div, we're going to add another div, which is going to be our backdrop for the modal. And we're going to say fixed inset 0 bg gray 500 and bg opacity 75. So that is the backdrop. And we are going to add another div with class name of fixed inset 0 z10 and width of screen. In there we're going to add another div, and we're going to say flex minimum height full items center justify center p4 text center and sm padding of 0. In there we're going to add another div, and we're going to say width full sm margin y8 sm max width lg. And inside of that we're going to add another div with class name of bg white padding over x4 padding bottom 4 padding top 5 sm padding 6 and sm padding bottom 4. And inside of that we're going to add another div with sm of flex and sm of items start. And in there we are finally going to add our form, and our form is going to have class name of margin top 3 with full text left sm margin left 4 and sm margin top 2 margin top 0. And on submit we are going to have a function called handle submit, which we currently don't have, so we are going to add it here. Const handle submit equals function, and it's going to accept the event as a parameter, and we are going to say event prevent default, and we are going to say add contact, which is our prop. So we're going to add this contact, and to add contact we are going to pass in our form data so we know what data to add. And we are going to say close and reset data, which is also a function which we don't have. So const, I'm going to copy paste this, which is going to be a function. And we are just going to say close, which is also our prop, which is going to activate closing of the modal, which is going to set the is open to false. And we're going to set form data to our default state, which is going to reset the modal. Okay, now back to our form. Inside of the form, we're going to have h3, which is going to have text of add contact and class name mb4 text lg font semi bold and text gray 900. Below that we're going to have a couple of divs which are going to have a margin bottom, so I'm just going to copy paste these, and we're going to have 3 divs which have margin bottom of 2 and one which has margin bottom of 4. And inside we are going to have a label and we are going to have an input. Now these are all going to be pretty much the same, so I'm just going to show you how to fill one and then we're going to copy paste all of the other ones. So the label is going to have HTML for name, and class name is going to be equal to block, font bold, and text gray 700. And the label itself is going to have text of name, and the input is going to have type of text. ID is going to be name, its name is going to be name, the value is going to be form data.name. There is going to be an onChange event, which is going to be called handle change. And we're going to add some class names with full, rounded, border, px3, py2, text gray 700, and shadow. And we need to add this function. So handle change is going to be a function, and this needs to be a const. So const handle change, and we are just going to say set form data, and we are going to spread our form data. And for our event, and this needs to accept the event as a parameter, and for our event dot target dot name, we are going to set the event dot target dot value. So this is basically just going to pick up all of the previous form data, spread it, and for this particular property, it's for its name, whichever it is, we're going to set the value that is being typed in. And now basically we are going to copy paste the label and the input, and we're just going to adjust them to fit all of our other inputs. So we're going to paste it in there, and we're going to change the name to email, and ID email, name email, form data email, and our label is also going to be email. Once again, copy pasting to the third one, and this is going to be phone number. This is going to be phone number, and this ID and the name are also, and the value are also going to be phone number. And for the fourth one, we are going to do the same, except this is going to be website, and ID and name and value, and this over here is going to be website URL. We are going to add another div, which is going to be our button container, which has a class name of px4, py3, smflex, smflex row reverse, and smpx6. And in there, we're going to add our buttons. So in there, we're going to add our two buttons. The first one is going to be add contact, and the second one is going to be cancel. And for this button, we're going to say type equals submit, and class name with full, justify, center, rounded, MD, BG, blue 600, px3, py2, text SM, font semi-bold, text white, shadow SM, hover, PG, blue 500, SM, ML, margin left 3, and SM width auto. And for the cancel, we are going to say type equals to button. On click, we are going to say close and reset data, and class name margin top 3 with full, justify, center, rounded, MD, border, BG white, px3, py2, text SM, font semi-bold, text gray 900, shadow SM, hover, BG gray 50, SM margin top 0, and SM width auto. And that's our modal, at least visually finished. Now we're going to go back to our app and we are going to delete this and return this. So now when we click on new contact, we get the modal, and when we hit cancel, we hide the modal and we can see our transition is also working. So that's very nice. Now we need to set up our Firebase. To do that, you can search for Firebase console and open up the Firebase console page. You will get a page for your Firebase projects. You can click on add project and let's give it a name phone book and hit continue. We are going to disable Google Analytics because it's unnecessary and it adds additional setup that we don't want, and hit create project. And you need to give it a few seconds to prepare your project. Once your Firebase project is ready, you can click continue and it's going to open up the project for us. Now I'm going to open this in full page and we need to get started by adding Firebase to our app. We are going to use the web button here and you can call this whatever you want. Let's do phone book app. We do not need Firebase hosting and we can register our app. And once again, we need to give it a few seconds. And now you are going to get instructions on how to set up your Firebase. So like I said, you need to install the Firebase in your project. You can use npm install Firebase if you're using npm, or you can use yarn add Firebase if you're using yarn. And after that, you are going to get this Firebase config, which is very important for you because it has the data or your configuration file, which is going to be used for you to connect to your Firebase instance. So take this Firebase config and copy paste it to your Firebase config file. So in utility, I added Firebase config, which you can see it's basically the same file with no values. Just copy paste that and then we can go to our Firebase file and we can start implementing all of the Firebase features. First off, we are going to import a bunch of stuff. So you need to import initialize app from Firebase/app. We need to import get firestore, collection, doc, add doc, get docs, and delete doc from Firebase/firestore. And we need to import our Firebase config from the Firebase config file. Next, we're going to say const app equals to initialize app, and we are going to pass in our Firebase config. And we're going to say const firestore equals get firestore, and we're going to pass in our app into get firestore. But next, we're going to have several functions that we're going to make and export. So we're going to have we're going to have a function add contact to Firebase. We are going to have get contact from Firebase, and we are going to have delete contact from Firebase, and we are going to export all of these so we can use them in our App.jsx. So this is going to be, all of these are going to be async functions, and this one is going to have a contact, and this one is going to be without the contact, and this one is going to delete based on the contact ID. So for adding contact, we're going to add a try catch block, and we're going to say const doc ref equals to await add doc, and we are going to pass in our collection, and inside of the collection we're going to say firestore, and now we need to pass in our doc name, and I'm going to say contacts. So if you don't have this in your firestore, this is going to be automatically created for you. So we are going to say firestore contact, and after that we are going to pass in our contact. and this function is going to return docref.id, and we are going to use that docref ID to set the ID inside of our React app, so we can use it as a key when we are mapping out all of the contact cards. And in the catch, we are going to catch an error, and we are just going to say console.error, error adding contact, and we are going to pass in this error. So for get contacts from Firebase, we are once again going to add our try catch block, and in the try we're going to say const query snapshot equals to await get docs. In get docs we're going to say collection firestore contacts, and this is going to give us our snapshot of our contacts table. And then we're going to say const contacts equal an empty array, and we're going to go through the query snapshot, and we're going to say for each doc we're going to say contacts.push, and we're going to make an object and say id is going to be doc.id, and we are going to spread the doc data after that, and this needs to be contacts. And in the end we are going to return all of the contacts, and in catch we're going to catch the error, and we're just going to do a console log with error fetching contacts and with that error. And for deleting contacts from Firebase, we are once again going to add a try catch block. In the catch, we're going to catch an error, and we are just going to say console error with deleting a contact. And in the try, we're going to say await delete doc, and we're going to pass in doc. Inside of the doc, we're going to pass in our firestore and from which doc we are deleting, and it's contacts. And we are going to pass in our contact ID. And this is all of our Firebase setup. Now we're going to go back to App.jsx, and we are going to implement removing contacts, adding contacts, and also fetching contacts from Firebase. So for add contact, we are going to add async here, and we're going to add contact as an parameter. We're going to say const new contact ID equals to await, and we need to import all of our functions from Firebase. So we're just going to say import add contact to Firebase, get contact from Firebase, and delete contact from Firebase from utility Firebase. So for this, we need to await add contact to Firebase, and we're going to pass in our contact. And if you remember, our add contact to Firebase is returning our contact ID. And if we have a new contact ID, so we successfully added contact to Firebase, we are going to create the contact for our state equals, and we're going to spread the contact, and for the ID we are going to say new contact ID. And we also want to sort our contacts because in a phone book, in a contact app, usually your contacts are sorted. So we're going to say const sorted contacts equals to sort, which is a function that we're going to add. And in there, we're going to spread contacts, and we are going to add our new contact. So we are basically creating a new array where old contacts get the new contact added and it gets sorted, and we are going to set contacts to our sorted contacts. Now we don't have the sort and we don't have set contacts either, so we are going to add those. So at the top we're going to say const contacts set contacts equal to useState. And above our function app, we are going to add our sort function, which accepts an array and returns the array.sort, which sorts A and B based on our name, which is set to lowercase. Since we added our state for contacts, we are not actually using our default contacts anymore, so we can delete them. And now we lost all of our stuff from here. And this should be sorted contacts, and this should be sorted contacts. For removing a contact, we're going to accept the ID as a input parameter, and we're going to say await delete contact from Firebase. We're going to pass in the ID, and after that we're going to say then we're going to add a function, and we're going to say const contacts dot filter, and we're going to go through contacts and say contact dot ID not equal to the ID. So we are filtering these so we don't do another fetch after we've basically removed a contact from Firebase. We are now just locally switching it in, removing it from the state as well, so we don't need to make another API call. And after that, we are setting contacts, and this should be new contacts, and we are setting our state with new contacts. And since this is an async function, we need to add async here as well. And the last thing that we need to do is fetching the contacts from Firebase. So we're going to use useEffect for that. So this is going to be done only once when the app loads. And we're going to say const fetch contacts equals to async const retrieved contact equals await get contacts from Firebase, and we are going to set our contacts, and before we set them we're going to sort the retrieved contacts. And after we've defined that function, we are going to call it, so fetch contacts. And now, since I've connected to my older version of the demo that I've shown you, I already have a bunch of contacts here, so we can see that fetching is working. We can try and delete Agent Smith here, and we're going to get asked, are you sure you want to delete this contact? We're going to say okay, and it's going to be removed. Now, if we refresh, we can see that Agent Smith is no longer there. So our fetching is working, our deleting is working. Now we need to try and add the new contact. Let's do Mr. Anderson, and let's do Anderson@gmail.com. And for phone number, let's do 44555. Let's just do Google for website URL. And we're going to say add contact. And we can see that Mr. Anderson has been added in alphabetical order. If I click on the mail icon, for me, Gmail is the default client, and we are going to have an email open here for Anderson@gmail. If we click on the phone icon, I'm going to get asked open pick an app because I don't have an app picked for calling. For URL, it's going to open up Google for us. And if we click delete, we are going to get the prompt for deleting. And this is what it looks like in the regular full window. And if we hit cancel, so the phone number didn't get deleted for some reason. Let's see what's going on there. This here, instead of phone number, this needs to be just phone. So HTML for phone. And yeah, so now it's getting deleted, and it probably didn't work as well as far as adding stuff goes. But yeah. So if you open your Firebase console and open up your project, I didn't add anything here, so no point in me opening that one, but this is the previous, the demo app that I built. So if I open the phone book private, and there's shortcuts, there's project shortcuts here that you can open. So we need Firestore database, or if you don't have it here, go to build and then Firestore database. And here you should have your contacts collection, and inside of the contacts collection you are going to have all of your contacts. So as you can see, I have them all here. Let's see if I can find the Mr. So here it is, Mr. Anderson. And because our phone wasn't set up properly, we got the phone number instead of the phone. But yeah, apart from that, now that we fixed that, this should work properly. So yeah. If you did this as well, you can either delete this entry here, or you can just edit it. And that's basically it. That's our app. I think it's a very fun and interesting project. I hope this video was helpful to you. If it was, make sure to give it a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.